Boker Tov. Today's daf is Daf Lamed Ches in Gitin, as we learn for Shloma for Elisha ben Ruma and Yosef Israel ben Chaim Michal. We're at the 11th line, about the 11th line on Lamed Ches and Malach, where we left off yesterday. Amar Rav Shaman bar Abba Rav Yochanan, Eved Shabarach. We talked in the Mishnah yesterday. We're getting into the idea of an Eved being released from bondage, and this has to do. Talking about Gitin over here, that's probably why this is brought down here. We're going to talk about a get of an Eved also. We haven't discussed that yet, but we will. Let's say an Eved escaped Beis Hasurim. He was in jail. The Goyim had him in jail, and he escaped. Yotza l'cheres. He's automatically. Now we're talking about an Eved Kanani who's owned by a Jew, but who was taken into captivity, and now he escaped from jail. He goes out free. V'lo od ela shekopanas rabo v'kosav lo get shichur. I mean, the Jewish owner hasn't given up on him. Hasn't been miyayish, yet we say that he goes out free, and we force his master to give him a get. Now, a get shichur, an Eved Kanani needs a get to be freed, just like a woman. A woman, in order to be free, to be released from her marriage, needs a get, unless the husband divorces her. So unless the husband dies, rather, I just said that, right? Unless he dies or divorces her. The same way, an Eved Kanani, right? An Eved Kanani, in order to be released, needs a get. Now, if the owner dies, it goes to his children, goes to his Yorshim. He's owned. The Eved Kanani is owned by the Jew. What is an Eved Kanani? Eved Kanani is really like a half a Jew. What does that mean? That he is sold to, so somehow he's either sold or inherited. Let's say he's sold to a Jew, and then the procedure is that he gets a bris milah l'shem Eved Kanani. He's like a half a Jew. He has mitzvahs like a woman. He doesn't get mitzvahs. He's not chayv mitzvah seishes my grandma, but he's chayv no mitzvahs. He's really what we call a half a Jew. Today we think a half a Jew is if he has one parent is Jewish, one's not. Doesn't really work that way. We know it goes according to the mother. The mother's Jewish, he's Jewish, or she's Jewish. Mother's not Jewish, they're not Jewish at all. But there is an incidence of a half a Jew, like an Eved Kanani, who's owned by his master. And in order to be freed, he has to give a get. We'll see if there's an exception to this also. Is there a way for him to be free, to be released from bondage without a get? We'll see in a minute there is such a shita. But the basic idea is he has to get a get shichur. So he has to get a shichur, he dies free. Now, why should that be? It's just because we learned yesterday in the Mishnah that if he was taken into captivity, not necessarily does he go out free. If he was ransomed, according to Tanakama, he goes back to his original master. According to Rav Shimon Gamliel, we'll say also, the question is, does he go back to the first master, the second master? The basic idea is he goes back to the first master. As we said yesterday, he goes according to Abai, who said it's before Yish. So what's this idea of here, that if he escaped from jail, from a Goyish jail, not only does he get his freedom, but you force him to give him a get, a release, a get of freedom, a writ of freedom. So this is what we're going to ask now. Either way, he goes back to his first master, right? That's what he said. Either way, he goes back to his first master. Why? Because he holds that you have to free him anyway. It's not, you don't say like the Tanakama that in order to encourage people to release him, we'll give him his freedom. No, he says either way he goes back to the first to his original master. Rav Yochanan himself said, also, whenever Rav Shimon is listed in a Mishnah, not a Brisa, but in a Mishnah, the law is like him with three exceptions. This member is brought down in many places in Shas. Except for these, there are three cases. One is an Arav, one is it happened in Sidon, and one is a Raya Achrona. There was a Raya Rishona, Rishona and Achrona. There are three cases in Shas where we don't pass with Shimon Gamliel. Every other case, Rabbi Yochanan says we pass with Shimon Gamliel. So if we pass with Shimon Gamliel, if an Eved we say was captured and released, he goes back to his original master. So why do you say over here? Why does Rabbi Yochanan say that an Eved who escaped from a Goyish jail goes out free, and you force the Jewish master to give him his freedom? Give him his freedom really means he becomes a full Jew. We said before that an Eved Kanani is a half a Jew, right? When he's acquired, he gives him a bris milah, and he's magayer him l'shem being an Eved Kanani. So he's a half a Jew. He's mitzvahs like a woman, like a Jewish woman, and he can marry a shifcha kananis, right? That's he can marry her. He's an Eved Kanani. He can marry a shifcha kananis. He's a half a Jew. He's a special status. If he gets his freedom, if the Jew gives him his get, or for some other he releases freedom. Now he's a full Jew. He's no longer an Eved. He's a Jew, and he's like a half a Jew in waiting to get his freedom. Once he's free, he's a full Jew. He can marry a regular Jewish girl. So the question over here is, why, if this Eved ran away, does he get his freedom? And we force the owner to give him a freedom. Shmuel said in our Mishnah, no, he goes back to his original master. So Bishlam Abaya. Well, if you learn, like we learn our Mishnah, that Abaya said a Mishnah speaking up before Yush Bishlam Abaya Mukula Lahai Lefneish Lahayachish. Very similar. Our Mishnah speaking about when you say doesn't how can Rabbi Yochanan say that he gets his freedom? Rabbi Yochanan also like Rabbi Shmuel in our Mishnah is he has that. Rabbi Yochanan said whatever Rabbi Shmuel is listed in the Mishnah, we paskin like him, and he said he goes back to his master. How do you say over here that if he ran away from the jail, he gets his freedom? So you could say, by the way, Abaya learned our Mishnah that was speaking of before years. The owner did not abandon him, right? That was before years. Before years, he goes back to his owner. But when he ran away, not only was he in jail in a Goyish jail, but he escaped from the jail. He was the Jewish owner was Miyayesh. He abandoned him. And Rashi says over here, the famous Shaila on Rishonim, is Yish like Hefker or not? So he says that's after Yish, after he's Mafkarim. So he's like, once he abandoned him, that's it. He gets his freedom. And according to Rabbi Yochanan, he still has to get a get. We'll see another sheet in a minute of Shmuel. But Rav explained our Mishnah speaking about after Yish, that even after Yish, Shmuel said he still goes back to his first master. Why? He gave the reason because of Chizkiah, right? Because Chizkiah said that if you let him go free, everybody will just, every Eved will give himself up to a guy and get his freedom that way. So therefore, he made a special takana. Even after Yish, goes back to his master. So according to Rava, who knows that the Mishnah speaking after Yish, he still goes back to his master. Why does Rabbi Yochanan say over here that he gets his freedom? Kash Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, Paskas like the Shmuel, and here Rabbi Yochanan says that he goes out free. Rava. Why did Rabbi Yochanan say? Why did Rabbi Shmuel say in our Mishnah that he goes back to his original master? Because of Chizkiah's reason. Because he gives it. Because otherwise, everybody will turn himself over. Every Eved, when he gets the chance, will turn himself over to a guy and say, "Look, what do I have to lose? I'm under bondage of a Jew. If I give myself to get my guy, the Jewish people will redeem me. Jews want to redeem me. I have a Kanani because he's a half a Jew. Either they'll redeem me for my freedom, and I gain." Worst comes to worst, I'll be the same Eved that I was before, so I have nothing to lose. But over here, Barech Shiny. But over here, where he escaped the Goyish jail, is different than giving himself up. When you escape, when the Goyim capture you and they put you in jail and you run away, you know very well that if you're caught, your chances of survival are minimal, right? They'll shoot you, they'll kill you, right? So Hashlalakon, because he's taking a chance, he's running away. So if he's giving himself up, he's willing to risk his life for this. The guy says, is he going to give himself up? He's running away from jail, risking his life. He's certainly not going to give himself up to a guy. So it's a different case. That's why Shmuel even be motive over here that he gets his freedom. Because again, according to Rav, after years, the owner gave up. It's only a special takana because of Chizkiah. Otherwise, every Eved will give himself up. But over here, when he's running away, he's risking himself. He's not going to give himself up that easily, and therefore he gets his freedom. Now, a few stories that are going to indicate the halachas. I'm saying to my Shmuel, listen carefully. This is Shmuel's halacha. We said now that you could, if you free, if an Eved gets his freedom, you still need a get shechra to release him from the ownership. I'm saying my Shmuel. Shmuel had a shifra knanis. She was taken into captivity. Parkula shemasa, and some Jews ransomed her to retain her slave status, not to be she didn't redeem her for her freedom, in which case she'd be a regular Jew who could marry could marry a Kohen, but could marry a regular Jew. So they sent it back to Shmuel. They heard Shmuel's maid was taken into captivity, was ransomed with camp. So they ransomed her. They did Shmuel a favor. We ransomed her. We're giving her back to you. She's your slave again. They sent to Shmuel like this: Anan Shmuel Sfirla. We hold like Rav Shmuel, meaning that you go back to your original slavery status, right? That if you were taken into captivity and you were redeemed, you go back, whether you redeem, Shmuel said in our Mishnah, whether you redeem l'shem Abdus, l'shem Ben Chorim, you go back to your original status because of Chizkiah. So, and we all like Shmuel goes back to you. You, Shmuel, we don't know how your whole life. Remember, Rabbi Yochanan holds Shmuel. We are like Shmuel. You, even if you hold like Rabbanan, that say what? That if you, it depends. For what purpose did you redeem her or him? Did you redeem them for? Did you redeem the Eved for Avdus? Then it says an Eved for Ben Chorin. It becomes Mechorin. But even if you hold like the Rabbanan sphere, even if you hold but we redeemed her to be an Eved. Even in the Mishnah, if everybody agrees that if you redeem the person to be an Eved, they stay an Eved. So we redeemed to stay an Eved, so she's yours. We redeemed her. So therefore, Shmuel, look what we've done. We've redeemed her and returned her to your bondage. The Inu Sava, the problem is Inu Sava, they thought it was before Yish. Oh, like Rabba, like Abaya said, it was before Yish. And everybody holds before Yish that if you redeem it for being an Eved, it goes back to being an Eved, go back to the original master. Lo, that wasn't the case. Shmuel had abandoned her already. Once she was taken into captivity, he gave up. Certainly she's not going to be an Eved anymore because he gave up on her. Once he gave up on her, that's it. If it's Lachi Yish, then let's say according to Abaye, after Yish, she gets her freedom. He doesn't even need a get. Shmuel is consistent with his reasoning. Shmuel holds that if you abandon your Eved, goes out free. And Rashi says, here's what Rashi says that Rashi's not going, Rashi as Yish, Rashi says have a hefker. Mine is blotted out of it, but that's the Gerson in Rashi is that Yish is mitam hefker. So once you're miyayish, since he mavda avdo, he was miyayish, so it's like hefker, and therefore and Shmuel holds that you don't even need to get shefer shneimar because the pasuk breaks it on pasuk says v'chol eved ish miknas kesef, an eved of a person who was bought by money. Saying about eved ish v'lo eved isha, what's that word ish for? Just say eved miknas kesef. What do you mean eved ish? Why eved ish v'lo eved isha? Excluding eved isha. El eved sheish l'mishus l'rabo olav. If he's of a person, meaning he's bonded, he's enslaved to a person, then he's kori eved she'ein lo rishus l'rabo olav. If his master has no authority over him anymore because he's abandoned him, he's been yayish, ain't kori, he's not called an eved anymore. In other words, Shmuel says you don't even need to get shecher in this case. So I said before that a woman is released from marriage in one of two ways, either divorce or death of the husband. So in Eved Kanani, we also have two ways to get divorced, either to be released, either with an Eved, either get shecher, or if he's mafkarim. We don't say if the death of the owner, because the death of the owner, the Eved goes as Yerusha to his to whoever his heirs are, children, cousins, whoever his next of kin is. So there's two ways. We have at least two ways now for an Eved Kanani also to get his freedom, either with a get or with the hefker. I guess that's Shmuel shita. Shmuel holds, not like others. Shmuel says, like we said before, Rabbi Yochanan says the Eved who ran away, and even if you say that it's after Yish, he still needs a get, right? He still needs a get, as we said before. Pardon? He's like Hefker, right? He's like Hefker. Still needs a get. He still needs to get according to because it's not 100% free. He still needs. He. Let's say this. He's free of the owner. The owner can't enslave him anymore, but he needs to get shicher to become a full Jew, right? Because the Eved Kanani is a half a Jew. He needs to get shicher, which officially makes him into a full Jew. Here's that's where it says the truth is he was miyayish, lachiyish, and yish is because of hefker. So again, he has no authority over him. Shmuel says so much so that he doesn't even need to get. He already gets the shuvah. The other say no, you still need to get shefer to become a full Jew. Another story that indicates halacha. Amsek Rav Abba Bar Zutra also he had a maid servant. Rav Abba had a maid servant. Ishtaboy, she was taken into captivity. It was very common when the Jews lived under the Goyish authorities to capture people because slavery, which by the way is predominant in many areas still in the world today. People think slavery is over. It's not over. In many places, it's very common. It's always been with human beings since almost the beginning of time. And people would capture slaves because it's an ownership. They needed slaves to work the land. So Amar Sutra, What was the line we once had? Somebody had one of those T-shirts they had at work. He says that we can't be fired; slaves need to be freed. Like that kind of thing. You have to be freed. So Amsid Rav Abba Bar Zutra, Ishtaboy, was taken to captivity. This lady, Parkai Talmuda. There was a guy from Talmud. That was the name of a place. A guy from Talmud redeemed her. A guy, in other words, so you had a Shifra Kananis, a half Jewish woman who was enslaved to Rav Abba, and she was taken into captivity. And Jews didn't get it before. Jews got a chance to redeem her. Some guy redeemed her. L'Shemissa wanted to marry her. Shalchulei the day. So they sent Rav Abba the following message: Eos, if you want to do some good, Avdus, if you want to do, if you were willing, Avdus, to do some good, right? If you're willing to do, Avdus says, and yes is good. If you want to do some good, you choose a good. Shall I get to the send her a get? Send her a get. Now the guy had taken her, had ransomed her to marry her, and they said, now send her a get. What was the purpose of sending her a get now? If the Jews could redeem her from, let's say, this other guy who had redeemed her, what do you need to get for? Just redeem her and take her back as your Shifra Knanis. And if you can't redeem her because the guy now wants to keep her for a wife, what's the point of sending her a get? The guy has her as his wife now. So what's the point? So one answer is they could redeem her. Here's the point. Jews would rather redeem a full Jew. It's a mitzvah to redeem somebody. But we had yesterday as Gemara, there's a difference of opinion. Will Jews redeem an Evet Knani or a Shifra Knanis who's a half Jew? They're more inclined to redeem a full Jew, regular Jew. The higher the social status, the more likely you are to redeem her. So he says, listen, if you give her a get shikra, which means that she's now a full Jewess, then people will get together and they'll raise money, they'll make an appeal in Shul Chaburi Machabre Adari, they'll get together, and they'll redeem her. In other words, do it in order to redeem her from this Talmudoid. Or another answer, maybe they can't redeem her. But what's the idea? The Talmudoid doesn't want to take any money. The kiva the mashad will get the cherisa, but if you send her a get of cherisa, if you send her a get of freedom, mitzvah bapay, the guy will look at her differently because he captured her, right? He redeemed this quote Jewish woman, right? Jewish woman. People say we've got a bunch of Jewish women here in the market that we got from them. The Jewish women are good women. So he ransomed her, right? He bought her. This guy bought her. But if you send her a get shechra, that shows that she was a slave woman. She wasn't a regular Jewish woman. Even if you send her a get, the cherisa mitzvah pay, she'll be cheapened in the eyes of the guy because he says, "Oh, I thought I got somebody, from the freedmen's. So now I got a slave woman, umafrik law, and he will redeem her for, he'll allow her to be redeemed at a reasonable price. Mafrik law, Rash says, b'chtei binyona. He's not going to ask too much money. In other words, the first answer was that he could redeem her, but the reason giving her get means that people will raise the money to redeem her because she'll be a Jewish woman. Or he'll tell me they won't redeem her. He won't take money for her now at all. But if you send her a get, she'll be cheapened in the eyes of the guy, and he'll then agree to be allowed to that the Jews will be able to redeem her. So that's the idea over here. That in this case, if you send her a get, she'll be a free woman. If you don't send her a get and you ransom her, so if you ransom her, l'shem avdu, so it depends. Before years, after years, Rishon Gamliel or not Rishon Gamliel, like we said. Why do you say I'll be cheapened in their eyes just because he's a Jewish slave woman? We said that that goyim are hold even Jewish animals. They would rather sleep. That's the Madrid. They'd rather sleep with a Jewish animal more than their own wives. That's the high esteem that the goyim have for the Jews. They'd rather sleep with a Jewish animal than with their own wives. So how could you say everyone should be cheap? Because Hanamili Bitsina, in seclusion, that's how they really feel. But they never admit that in public, right? They won't cheapen themselves, and it's beneath them to admit that in public. So once everybody sees that she was a slave woman, she'll be allowed to be redeemed. So that's what they said to Rav Abba, send her a get, either because if you send her a get, then the Jews will raise money for her, and redeem her because now she's a full Jewish woman, or because if you send her a get, she'll be cheapened in the eyes of the guy, and he'll let her be redeemed for less money. Hayomi said comes to another story with a maid, Jewish Shifra Kananis, a Jewish, half Jewish slave woman in Pumbedisa. That mother issues her. People treated her, people treated her like a slut, and they did isurim with her, and they acted improperly with her, sexually improper with her, and they constantly took advantage of her. Amar Abaya. We're going to say, are you allowed to be free as slave? You might think that slavery is a terrible thing, but the Torah sanctioned slavery and said you're not supposed to free your slaves. You're supposed to keep them in the family. You need somebody to do work for you, and Jews are on a higher madrega. If it wouldn't be, Rabbi Shmuel says that if you free your slaves, you're over on an asay, on a mitzvah of lolam tavod, as we'll see in a few minutes. The pasuk says lolam tavod is supposed to work for you forever. So in other words, Shmuel said, if it wouldn't be, because I see this abuse, they're abusing this half Jewish woman, and if it wouldn't be that that there's an aveira to be mashachar her, it's you're over and say, I would force the owner because of the get to give her a get shifra the cherisa, so that she'll be a full Jewish woman, and then she'll be married to a Jew, and then the Jewish man will guard her and make sure that she's not abused. That's what Shmuel said. Vinomar, Ravina said, Kihal Motor Rav Yehuda. Even Rav Yehuda, who said the name of Shmuel, that you're not allowed to free slave if you're over Nasei, here even Rav Yehuda's moda, Yishum Milsa Yisura, because when she's being mistreated and abused by many people, there's a reason to swear, so you should free her anyway. So that's what Ravina said, you should free her anyway. This idea of Milsa Yisura, or as we'll see, when a mitzvah is involved, is when it, unfortunately, say when it involves many people. It's not a one isser or one mitzvah for one person, but here many people are abusing her, and it involves the tzibur. So I would certainly free her. Abaya, Mishum Yisura, lo, doesn't Abaya, who said, Amar Abaya, if it wouldn't be that Rabbi Shmuel says that you're not allowed to free slave, I would force him. So Abaya doesn't hold it because of Yisur, we allow her to be free. Amar Chnina Barav Katina, Amar Yitzchak Ma'is Bishach, it was a woman. A woman was half slave woman and half free. How do you have that? When partners own a woman together, own a slave woman, and one partner freed his half of her. Doesn't go by half, from the waist up to the waist down. He owns half of the whole thing. So she's now half a slave woman, half a Jewish woman. She can't marry anybody. She's not allowed to be with an Evet Kanani because she's her Jewish part of her full Jewish part of her, and she can't sleep with a Jewish man because she's an Evet Kanani. Oh, so an Evet Ivri, if you have an Evet Ivri, but you may not have an Evet Ivri, So v'kofes Rabba ba'asa bas chorin. So what you do over there, what happened in the case? She was half and half, and she had nobody to marry, so they forced the master to free her, right? V'kofes Rabba ba'asa bas chorin. So you see over here, you could force her in a case where there's no option. Again, they abused her. They treated her like a slut, and that's right, freedom. So I can compare those two cases. She wasn't roy for either one. She wasn't roy to be for an evet because her chelik is bas chorin. She wasn't roy to be with a ben chorin because her chelik that was a shifra knanis. So therefore, she wasn't roy for anybody, and therefore there was nobody to guard her. Therefore, she was just loose on the streets. Nobody took care of her. She wasn't set aside for one person. She wasn't. Exactly. She wasn't owned by any one person, so to speak. She was owned. Half of her that was owned by a master, but there was no man who was supposed to be with her all the time. So there were no after. They were no with her snus. But over here, where she's a shifra knanis, you could set aside an Evet Kanani to be with her, and he'll guard her. So there's an option over here. So Abaya said you can't free her, and if people are abusing her, so set aside an Evet Kanani who will be her husband, and he will guard her. It's different in the case of a half and a half. If you free your slave over Besa, you're over on a station. You're not allowed to free your slave. Story Lezer went into the shul. He couldn't find a sainter, right? There was only 9 people. Even in those days, they had difficulty getting a minyan sometimes. and he freed his slave so that he would be a full Jew. So he had a minion. So you see, you could free a slave. Mitzvah shiny, it's different because it was still a mitzvah, and a mitzvah of a rabbin, not just a mitzvah of himself. Just like you said before, when he was in Yisur of a rabbin, and Nichshol the rabbin, there was a reason to free him. Same thing, there's a reason to free the slave here. This pasuk that says that they should work for you forever. Is it a mitzvah that you can't be over and you're over and I say? Well, it's a machlokas here. Lam tavoda is rishus. If you want, you can keep them. You don't have to. Div Rabbi Shmuel says you don't have to. They could work for you forever. You don't have to free them, right? But if you wanted to free them, you could. If you want to be a nice guy and free your slaves, you could. That's what Rabbi Shmuel said. Kibbutz says no chova. It's a chov. It's an obligation that you have to keep them forever. You're not allowed to free them. So if Rabbi Lezer command Rabbi Lezer who freed a slave to get the 10th minion, why do you say mitzvah shiny? Why did you get mitzvah shiny? Said Zoch against the mitzvah shiny. Just say maybe he holds like Rabbi Shmuel, who says that it's rishus if you want to keep, but if you want to free him, you can free him. Why do you have to give this whole business? Also, you can't say that. The Tanya Behedya, Rabbi Lezer says specifically, Rabbi Lezer Machover. Rabbi Lezer agrees with Rabbi Kiva, who says that Lam Tavadu is a chov. You're not allowed to free your slave. Amar Bani Tasmili Nachse Balibatim Nechsem. There are three reasons why people lose their assets and they become poor. Number one, they free their slaves. Well, you could look at that financially, right? Economically, free the slaves. There's nobody to do the work. You can't do the plantation. You can't work the fields. Come free. But they're really saying because you're over on the mitzvah of Lolam and Tavodu. They free their slaves. On Shabbos, they take a walk around the fields and just think about how much fertilizer they need tomorrow and how many seeds they need and things like that. They plan their work on Shabbos. And they have their Shabbos Suda at the time when they should be listening to the rabbi's speech. Using that word loosely, right? Not the word rabbi, the speech. With the Gavai Sudatsu Shabbos, even at the time of the base This is the time we're supposed to come to the Shiur. So don't schedule your meal then. Schedule your meal after or before the base measures. For these three reasons, people lose their assets. Two of them have to do with Shabbos, right? That they're planning on Shabbos the work that they have to do during the week, or they don't come to the Shiur on Shabbos. And the other one is because they free their slaves. There were two families in Yerushalayim that were wealthy families. One made their meal on Shabbos. Right? One made their meal on Shabbos. What does it mean? Shabbos at the time when they should have been in the base medrash. Right? They both became uprooted. They didn't become uprooted. So it means they lost their assets. They became impoverished, right? So Rashi says one made their meal on Shabbos. Presumably, it means at the time of the base medrash. They should have been learning then as you come to the Shiur. And one made on Erev Shabbos. What do you mean made on Erev Shabbos? So one way to learn Rashi is that they made their main meal on Friday night, and the main meal should have been during Shabbos day. Another answer is they actually made the meal on Friday afternoon before Shabbos started. They ate the meal then, and so you're supposed to come into Shabbos with an appetite. So because of that, they lost their assets. You're staying in that group. All right. So the idea is you're supposed to treat Shabbos properly, have the meal at the right time on Friday night at night, and have their main meal during the day, and don't plan your Shabbos your work for the weekdays during Shabbos. Now we come to a new sugya. Amarav. Let's understand something. We've learned in Kachim, like we say, the Eizim Makoman, you're makdish an animal, you bring him to the base of Mikdash, you bring him as a carbon, right? What do you do if you're makdish an animal, let's say a donkey, that can't be brought as a carbon? So your makdish goes to Bedek Abayas. They take the animal, maybe they could work the animal in the field that belonged to Hegdish, or they could sell it, get the money for it, and use the money for Bedek Abayas, building, construction, repairs, etc. in the base of Mikdash. That's if you have something that easily if it's an animal that could be brought as a carbon, a short kesef or A's, even if you're makdish it only for Bedek Abayas, we'll see we hold that if it's right to be a carbon, you should use it for a carbon. Let's say I say I'm giving the value of my animal to the base of Mikdash. That means if I have an animal worth $500, so I'm giving $500 to the base. I didn't give the animal, I gave the value, right? The value. So here we're going to come into a question. What happens if you're makdish your eved? Right? So you're makdish your eved can't be brought as a carbon. You can't use him in construction, you can't build him into the wall. He's a human being. So what does that mean? Well, there's another meaning for Hegdish. You are a holy people. The Jews are holy people. Maybe makdish means I'm giving him his freedom. I'm making him a full Jew. That's what makdish could mean also. That's what Rav says. So Rav says, makdish abdo, even though you could interpret it as being something else, right? Maybe I'm giving his value, right? Maybe I'm giving him for bedek abayas to be sold and what to be that bedek could sell him in turn. No, Rav says not like that. Hamakdish abdo, there's an option because when it comes to human beings who are not Jewish, I can make him Jewish. That's also what we imagine. Makdish abdo yasel cheres, my time. Gufei lekadosh. You can't give his body. His body's not holy as a carbon. That l'dami lo kamar. If he says I give the, let's say the eved is worth $900. So if I said, listen, I'm going to give the value of my eved to the base mikdash, that means I'm giving $900. I don't owe the eved, I owe the value, $900. I said he didn't say l'dami. He didn't say l'dami. Rashi says l'dami lo kamar haylo demei abdei alai. The value of my eved I give to the base mikdash. He didn't say that. So what did he say? Lo kamar the lahavi am kadosh kamar. So Rav says, Rav says. I meant to say, it can't be that he's brought as a carbon, right? He's not kadosh in that sense, not kadosh in that sense. A person also, a Jew can't also be kadosh. You can't bring him as a carbon. So, and I didn't say for the value, I'm giving his value. So I meant to say, I'm making him a Jew. I'm making him a full Jew. He's making him am kadosh. That's what Rav says, and we're going to talk about that later on. First, Rav Yosef though interjects another thing. Rav hamafka yasol cheres. If you're mafki your eved, you abandon him. Also, he goes out free. So now that we're makdish, if you say makdish, which is ambiguous, what do I mean by makdish? Am I making him his value holy? I'm making this. So Rav says he didn't say value, and you can't bring him as a carbon. He can't be built into you can't use him as in construction in the base of Mikdash. So what did you meant? You meant you're making him holy, you're making him a Jew. Yeah. So the one that says even there where it's ambiguous, makdish kolshkin after, certainly if you abandon him, certainly he goes out free. He goes out free, becomes a Jew. Mandam or mafker, the one that says mafker, that's different. You abandon him, he's no longer yours anymore, so therefore he's a Jew. That's the only way out. He can't become a guy again. Aval makdish lo, that makdish is ambiguous. He doesn't go that far. Whereas Rabbi Yosef from Rav says, Rabbi Yosef said, and as he didn't learn, Rav said even makdish abdo goes out free because I've been making him holy, making him a Jew. Rabbi Yosef in the name Rav said, no, mafker, I said. The one who says mafker, Aval makdish lo, dilma l'damikamer. Maybe makdish also meant, I didn't say I'm giving his value, but maybe I meant to say I'm sanctifying my evidence. Maybe also means to say I'm giving his value. Maybe that's what I meant, because it's ambiguous. Did I mean his value or did I mean him himself? It's holy, can't be as a carbon, so it must be Jew. So Rabbi Yosef didn't go that far. Rabbi Yosef says, no, mafker, yes, not makdish. Makdish could mean for the money. Yeah.
Evidence like karka, though. So if he says kodesh, why isn't it like karka that it's giving it over?
And they could sell it, right? Good, very good. But that's the countering opinion. That's the countering opinion. And why don't you say that? The answer is because just like the case of, let's say, short kesef A's, right? If it's karka, so karka can only be sold. You give them karka, and they'll sell the money and use it for bedek abayis or whatever. Karbonis, they give you whatever base makes you use it for. That's true here too. But Rav says that since it's possible that it means I'm making him holy, making him a Jew, I'd rather use that interpretation. I'll give an example I gave before. Let's say he says, I have a short kesef A's over here, which are right to be brought as a carbon. I'm not bringing it as a carbon. I'm giving it for bedek abayis. So I bring a pig or a horse, and I give it basically, they're going to use it for bedek abayis. They own it. They'll sell it. They'll bring it for bedek abayis or use it for other money. But if I bring a short kesef A's and I say I'm giving that as money for bedek abayis, right? The animal becomes holy for kedusha. Because if it's roy to be used for mizbeach, then you have to use it for the mizbeach. Here too, Rav says the same idea. that if it's since Kadosh can mean I'm making him a Jew, which is a much better status, a full Jew, I'm giving him his freedom, I'd rather use that interpretation. That's what Rav says. Now the countering opinion is, if you don't hold like Rav, and Chanami just means Ladami. That's really what Rav Yosef from Rav says. Mafker is one thing, but Makdish, no, Makdish can mean just for the value.
But in either case, with Karka, you sell the land.
That's right.
And
So
you get the money.
exactly.
So
No.
You get the money's worth.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's
either way it goes out for you.
No. We're gonna see it. No. I'm giving him. So I'm not giving him the if he's giving the Evet again. So Rashi's going to say that later on. Since it could mean, you're right, it could mean that. But since it could also mean, according to Rav, that I'm making him holy, that's a better. Just like the short ways, I'm giving him for better bias. But since he could be holy, it gets kedusha saguf, and you have to bring it as a carbon. The same thing over here. Since it could mean, it's ambiguous, but according to Rav, since it could mean I'm making him a full Jew, that's the interpretation that he chooses. You're right, it could mean that too. I'm giving it as a karka or as a pig or something else at a base of Mikdash, which they can't use as a carbon, and they'll sell it. But I'm not. But he chooses not to. He says since it could be that. Pardon?
I was saying if you sell an Evet, if
Yeah.
Esther sells the Evet,
Right.
stays in Evet.
He says that correct, right? And then we'll see in a minute. There's another brisa that says that Haggish himself cannot free him, but Evet could sell, but he could sell him to somebody else, and the other person could free him, but he'd be a slave still until he frees him. So he boiled the Gemara asks, okay, Tzarch get Shiur or Tzarch. We just said that Makdish, according to Rav Yosef, makes him free, and Mafkir, according to Rav Yosef, and Rav makes him free. Do you need to get Shiur or not? They both go out free. Rav says this now. He says name Rav. They both go out free. The Tzarch get Shiur. In other words, he holds. So this Rabin, Rav Chia bar Rabin says the name of Rav, just like Rabba says, they both go out free. Not like Shmuel said. Shmuel said on Amar Aleph that a Mafker Abda doesn't even need to get Shiur. He's a full Jew automatically. Rav says goes out, whether it's a Mafker or even Makdish, according to Rabba, Rabba in the name of Rav, and he is the Shiur. Amar Rabba. So Rabba said, even though I just said in the name of Rav that if you're Makdish, he goes out free, because I'm saying I'm Kadosh Atar, you're a holy person, you must finish right. We're going to ask a kasha now from this brisa. Makdish nechasav. Let's say you Makdish all your assets. And among your assets, you have Nevi Kanani. They cannot free them. They cannot free them. Why? Because they are simply Bezdin doesn't have the right to free a slave. He has the rights of ownership. He could sell them to somebody else, and we'll see. They're not Rishoy L'Ches. But they could sell them, right? They own the but like what you say, Avram, what you said, if you're Makdish and he has an Evet Kanani there, he owns some like Karka. He owns the basement, the basement dish, the Gizbar, own like Karka, and they could sell it. They're not allowed to free. They don't have the power to free, but they have the power to sell. Other people can free them, like you just said. He still stays in it. Rabbi he himself, if they have a Kanani, let's say that usually we have a call mashakana isha kana bala, but mashakana evet kana adono. So the same thing over here. But let's say somebody gave him money on the condition that the master does not get his hands on it. And he can free himself. He can also buy himself. The Gizbarim can sell him to another person or to himself if he can come up with the money. So what do you see over here? Rashi says right here with the wines first get a little bit wide. Alma makdish evet kadosh ladama. You see over here is kadosh for his hand. Why do you say? Rav says what? That if you free if you sanctify your slave, I'm makdish avdo. You've made him free. I'm kadosh atah. Here you see that if you're makdish him, he didn't go out free. He belongs to the base of Mikdash. Base of Mikdash can't free him directly. They could sell him to somebody else, and the other guy could free him. So the Gemara says, "Masisa comes like yes, and kasha from a Mishnah or a Brisa on Rav. Rav Tanu Polik. He disagrees, right? The Mishnah goes like you say, Avram. The Mishnah or the Brisa goes again. You're Makdash, your Eved. You can't bring him as a carbon, so it's like your Makdash karka or a Makdash horse or something like that. They free him. That's so you can't kasha there. But now the Gemara is asking him a pasuk. Okay, maybe Rav could argue with the Mishnah, but the pasuk says Tashma Ach Kol Cherem. Cherem is a kind of it's a banishment or something that's banned, but it's a way, it's a kind of a kedusha that goes either to the Kohanim or to the base of Mikdash. After Cherem says Yachem will be Kodesh Hashem. May Adam says from a person Ad Behema Elu Avoda V'Shivchosa Kananim, even people. So you see over here that if you are makdish an eved or a shifcha, he's holy to the base of Mikdash. So the Gemara says, the Omer Ledmei. There it's speaking about when I said the value of. If I say the value of my eved goes to the base of Mikdash and my eved's worth $900, so I'm giving $900. That's all. I pledged $900. You want it in shekels, you want it in dollars, however you want it, but I'm giving the value. I'm not giving the eved. There. So why don't you say in the first case too? Why did you say that Rav argues with the Brisa? Maybe it's also a makdish dechasa. Maybe it's also where you gave the value. If you only give the value, what do you mean? The Gizbarim cannot free him. He didn't give the eved. If you say he only gave the value of, what are the Gizbarim dealing with the eved? He only gave the value of. Or Gizbarim, what are they Gizbarim? They don't own the eved at all. They can go make fish. They could sell it to somebody else. What do you mean somebody could sell them? He didn't. If I say I'm giving the value of my eved's worth $900. You can't take my eved. I said I'm giving the value. What do I do? Basu, Rabbi Omer, after no saying to me, ask me, he can buy himself out the Yotze. They should come off below. He's not selling it to him. All I gave was I'm giving my value. I'm giving the value of this eved there. So therefore, in that case, you have to say Rav argues with the Brisa. But as far as the pasuk goes, the pasuk is speaking about where he gave the value. Again, there's different ways to be makdish. If I say I'm makdish my eved, what does that mean? I'm makdish the eved. Rav says it means, since it could mean ki am kadosh atah, I'm making you a full Jew, so it means that too. So Tashma, before we can get to the Shema, take a look at Rashi here because he brings up really what Avram's asking. Rashi, 5 lines from the bottom of the page. As we say over here, Gizbar, what are the Mavar Association? They only have 7. The Ikasha. He said, take a look at Rashi, 5 lines from the bottom of the page. Ikasha looking on the Omar Hare who kadosh ledomav. I'm being makdishim for its value, right? The achshavu kadosh limachav r'shusa olav limkor ukamakdish karka ubehema tmeya. That's your kasha, Avram. Why don't you say it's like being makdish an animal, right? Or being an animal that can't be brought as a carbon or a karka. Shritz the keep the shach b'gufalosh kedusha the am kadosh. I'm telling you what Rashi says. What I said before was what Rashi says. Since it could mean I'm making you a full Jew, right? Even if I say being makdish from him for his value, but since it could mean the higher kedusha of making him a full Jew, it means that. Why? If I give a short kesav, a kosher, unblemished animal, short kesav, I don't want to bring it as a carbon. I'm bringing it for its value, for better kabayis. Because now, because if you would say I'm being makdish for its value, according to Rav, since he could mean am kadosh ata, he would be free. Tashma, but now we have a proof. Makdish abdo. If you're makdish your animal, here he says clearly, makdish abdo, osav ochol, shlokish namav. You could, whatever the animal does, whatever the eved produces, you can eat. It's not kadosh. You might say makdish your eved. What does it mean? There's makdish his value. All I did was makdish his value. You can't be makdish. So whatever he does, the work that he does is not holy. It's not holy. You don't say it's hektish. I'm makdish him for his value. Here he says, I'm makdish the person for his value. So we say what he does is I'm makdish for his animal, for his value, meaning what he can be sold for. But what he does doesn't mean that he himself is kadosh or anything that he does is kadosh. And you sell him for his value. Here he says it's like this. So this goes against Rav, because Rav says if you makdish your eved, he goes out free. He's a full Jew. Here we're saying a makdish abdo. No, it only means that you're makdish him for his value. Below Omar, Elaharehu Kadosh. He's Kadosh for whatever his value is. It's like Karka baby that Besson could sell, that Gizbar himself. Gemara says that's not a kasha. Money goes like a mayor. And the reason he's Kadosh is not because he's really Kadosh. The Omar ain't the most volatile. Rav Meir says, there's an error for every Jew. right? If he's from 30 days old to 5 years, 5 years to 20, 20 to 60, different values. Men and women are different, right? Let's say he says, I'm giving the value of a 2-day-old baby to the base of Mikdash, the erech of, there is no such thing. There's no such thing. So Meir holds, you don't say something for nothing. So therefore, you must have meant I'm giving the value of, right? You must have meant that. Rav Meir says, no sin damav. There's no erech, and the Torah specifies what the erech is, but I'm giving his value, right? Because I didn't say it for nothing. I must have meant something. So it goes like, so therefore he says like this, you're right. Rav Meir disagrees with Rav, doesn't like Rav, but he says, listen, you can't be makdish a person. So therefore it must mean that I'm makdish him for his value, and that the Beis Hamikdash can now use him and sell him and whatever his value is. In other words, he disagrees with Rav. Rav says you're makdish him, he could be holy, you can turn him into a Jew. Rashi says here, like a gimp, like a by Erichin over there. And the Gemara goes on the second line, it says, let's say you're makdish yourself. Makdish yourself. Can you be makdish yourself? You can't be holy yourself, right? More than you are now. Whatever you do, you can eat it yourself. In other words, it doesn't mean that your work product becomes holy. I only was makdish whatever my value is. In other words, if I would sell myself, I'm not allowed to sell myself. I'm not an eved, right? But if I would sell myself, what am I worth on the market? So in a case like that, so again, it means that. Yeah, I'm a bishlam or a Meir if it goes to Meir Shapiro. The Meir says, how can I be makdish myself? It doesn't mean that. It must mean I'm makdish my value. If you say Rabbanan bishlam avdo l'dami, you could say I'm makdish my eved. I meant because he's worth money on the market. I could sell Eliyu l'dami koi. But as a man can't be sold. You can't sell a Jew on the market. So how could it mean that? Elamai, it can't be the Rabbanim would say it wouldn't make sense. But the Seif over there says that if you makdish yourself, you could still what you're really saying is if I would be sold, what would I be worth on the market? I can't be sold, but what would I be sold if I would be sold? What would I be worth? So that means that this is going according to Meir, because according to Rabbanan, the person it's not worth anything on the market because he can't be sold on the market. Rashi says, particularly Rashi, a person not worth any. That doesn't mean that he says I'm giving him for his. He didn't say that the words mean ladami. Since his words were not said for nothing, he meant to say, I'm giving my value as if I would be sold on the market. In other words, the lashon of a makdish avdo does not mean I'm giving him for his value. According to Meir says that since I said something, I didn't say it for nothing. So therefore, it's just the same thing if I makdish myself. I didn't say it for nothing. So I must have meant to say that I'm giving whatever I could be sold for in the market. If I were an eved, what I'd be sold for, I'm giving that amount to the base of Midish. So this goes like Rav Meir disagrees with Rav. So Rav still maintains his ground that if you tell your eved, if you say I'm makdish my eved, he goes out free. I'm making him a full Jew, and you still need to get shechur. Shmuel says if you're mafker your eved, you don't even need to get shechur. But Rav holds it either you're makdish or you're mafker your eved, goes out free, but you need to get shechur. All right, tomorrow's daf we'll pick it up from Lemig Shtanoi, and on Sunday morning we'll pick it up on Shabbos' daf, the last line. The last line on Shabbos' daf on Lamed Testament Beis. We'll start there on Sunday morning. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.